and welcome back to Blocks Live TV. Today is Thursday, May the 16th. We're now live for the latest in the crypto world. It's 9:30 a.m. in New York City, 2:30 p.m. in London, 10:30 p.m. in Tokyo, and 3:30 p.m. here in Malta. Well, Kevin Mirko and Jason Fernandez are with us on the show today as the total market capitalization printed a fresh high for the year at more than $263 billion US. But first, let's take a look at some of the market indicators. Well, the cryptocurrency index CCI 30 has surged past the 4,200-point mark. The index of the top 30 cryptocurrencies has surged more than 42% so far in May, and its year-to-date increase measures at nearly 93%. The 30-day Bitcoin volatility index remained close to the 3.5% mark yesterday, after rising by more than 1% during the recent days. Now, the CoinMarketCap website's 24-hour traded volume indicator continues printing fresh all-time highs. This time, it's raced past the $110 billion level. Now, this does coincide with an increase of the Messari website's real-time measure that stands now close to $5.6 billion. The Bitcoin dominance indicator has seen a bumpy ride over the past week. It jumped above the 60% level on Monday. It's currently plummeted by more than 4% as altcoins catch up on the Bitcoin rally. The top 5 digital assets are all trading in the green. Bitcoin posts the smallest increase among the large caps, but it trades north of the $8,000 US level. Ether is the top performer with a daily surge of just under 16%. This move puts the price of a digital coin at more than $260 US. XRP has given up some of the earlier gains after jumping above the 47% mark, and Bitcoin Cash has broken through the $400 US resistance line on a daily gain of almost 9%. Well, lastly, Litecoin trades near the key $100 US price level. The Coin 360 heat map shows that we are having yet another extremely bullish day on the cryptocurrency markets. According to the Token Spread website, the price of Bitcoin has dropped below the $8,000 US level on the XMO exchange. It trades at a discount of slightly more than 3% when compared to the CEX price. The Kraken exchange has the biggest spread of 0.11%. Well, today we'll review some of the characteristics of the LA token. Its cryptocurrency exchange is focusing on liquidity for new tokens. So along with trading, it also offers token sales, pre-sales and crowd sales. The platform has its own LA token, and the ERC20 asset reached its all-time high price of $2 in early 2018. Currently, the digital asset trades at just over 15 US cents. We'll now review the performance of the various cryptocurrency assets as grouped by the Messari website. Starting off with the infrastructure group, which is the most bullish asset class today, with a massive surge of 12%. The majority of the digital assets are posting double-digit gains. The media and entertainment category is up by double digits as most of the assets show sharp increases. Now, the financial sector is the worst performer, but is still nearly 10% in the positive territory. The currency category has gained 11%. Bitcoin and Danacoin are the only two assets showing moderate increases. And Project Pi is one of the rare assets that's trading in the red today. Well, lastly, the services section wraps up this list with a solid increase of nearly 12%. That's where the 5 major cryptocurrency categories stand so far on this bullish Thursday. There are plenty of massive increases today. We'll now show you the top 5 gainers, and these will be followed by the top 5 decliners, where there are no double-digit moves today. Let's take a look. to the top 24-hour moves during the European morning trading session on this Thursday. Stay with me after a very short break. We'll be back with our cryptocurrency experts.
There are 180 different countries all around the world, which makes us grow in like a sphere.
We are stronger than ever.
Have these questions answered without disclosing anything.
AI field is mostly controlled by a few large corporations.
Much busier, bigger than ever.
In the mid-2020s. I do think that will come.
We should kind of keep in mind that we want the world to be a better place.
$15 billion a day. This is incredible.
People find a way to create infrastructure.
I think knowledge is one of the most important things in the world.
We laid the foundation for the distributed trust model that Satoshi builds on.
It does come with some risk, but at the same time, I think it's an opportunity for countries.
Individuals miss the boat on a market, they miss the boat. When the institutions miss the boat, they bring the boat back.
This is Blocks Live TV.
We're back on Blocks Live TV. We'll now join Jason Fernandez, COO and co-founder of AE Token, and Kevin Mirko, CEO of the Coin Metro Exchange. Both of you, thank you so much for joining me on the line today.
Thank you, Jessica.
Always a pleasure. Now, it's been an interesting day so far. And Kevin, I want to start with you with this one. We have seen Bitcoin has actually rose above the 8,300 US dollar level during the early trading hours. But most of the gains were given up afterwards. Are we still seeing more of the same, where Bitcoin gains first and then these profits are moving towards altcoins?
I think we still are seeing that, though. I don't think that's the major catalyst for the move back down from 8,300. I think basically you're seeing a lot profit taking, which definitely some of it could be going into altcoins. At the same time, though, I think the move itself was stalled, I'd say, for 2 to 3 days, right, where we sat around that 8,000 level, and we're kind of trying to find direction. Obviously, for a market to move north, it needs to find buyers. So we probably, normally around large figures, meaning 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, et cetera, 5,000, 8,000, you have less buyers than you do at lower numbers, meaning that for a market to find that next leg up, it needs to move down a bit. It needs to retrace its steps a bit to find those buyers. So generally speaking, usually within let's say a 200 to 300 range around a large figure. So around 8,000, you're going to see 7,700 upwards to 8,300. Be your major range. And then as you move a bit lower to old resistance levels, which now become support, you also see that where buyers are going to sit below that major 8,000 figure. So I think just like every figure we've seen from 5,000 up over the past 8 weeks or so, we've seen fighting around that large figure, and that fighting generally, at least for the last 8 weeks, has seen the market push higher. So we'll have to see if 8,300 holds. Obviously, after 8,300, we have 8,500 as a major resistance, and then onwards up to 8,700 and 8,900. And on the low side, we have that nice 7,700, and then down 75, 76. I mentioned yesterday, I think 7,200 to 7,800 being probably a nice support range from where we saw previous resistance.
And we are really flirting very closely with this 8,000 US dollar level. I think we're just under it at the moment. So you'd say this is quite normal behavior pattern that we are seeing at the moment, Kevin?
Yeah, in every market, not just crypto.
Okay. And Jason, what's your thoughts that we are seeing here? Are we seeing that actually some people are taking profits out, like Kevin also mentioned? Do you think people are moving towards altcoins?
Yeah, so I think in all likelihood, we are seeing some Bitcoin moving into altcoins. But it also has to do with traders basically taking profits when it appears that Bitcoin is slowed down. So you've seen this reflected in the Bitcoin dominance numbers. Right now, it's at about 57%. And that's lower than it's been over the past couple of days, but it's still much higher than we're used to seeing. So this ebb and flow is expected, particularly when Bitcoin dominance spikes. There would be strong market forces looking to bring that down and back into balance. Like I said yesterday, if Bitcoin is able to recover its gains quickly, that would be the real test of whether this is this recovery or even bull market is going to stick. And I guess that's what it appears to be happening, because every time it drops and it comes back, that continually reinforces that support line, and that's a good sign. So it's at 7,900 right now. If it could pop back up to 8,000, that would bode well. But even if it went down to 7,700, that would still be fine because it would probably recover very soon.
And do you think it is quite crucial for it to be under the $8,000 mark, actually, for more people to enter the space? Do you think, as Kevin was also saying, there is this psychological level that the 8,000 is something where it's not a good entry point for investors?
So like at every major 1,000 number, we've seen it touch that. Usually we see it touch that a little bit, go a little bit forward, and then retrace its steps. But we didn't really see that at 6,000. We didn't really see that much at 7,000 either. So I would assume that it's sort of just under 8,000 right now. And if it blew past that, it could go much higher. So, because that's what we saw at least with 6,000 and 7,000. We didn't see it, spend a lot of time in the 7,200s and even the 6,200s. So I'm hoping that would be how it would behave even in the 8,000s. But it could go back to the earlier pattern of sort of slowing down a little bit, waiting till it builds that support, and then popping up over 8,000 again.
And now that we are on the topic of of bullish patterns that we are seeing, Ether is actually the top performer among the major digital assets. So I do want to ask you, Jason, do you think there's any particular drivers for Ethereum today?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you consider, when we're talking about moving money into alts, Ether is probably the first cryptocurrency that people start thinking about moving their money into. I mean, we know that Ether is the second most popular cryptocurrency and has been that way for years. So it's not likely to be left out of the fun when you have, a massive bull run in Bitcoin. Also, there hasn't been really any bullish news on Ether today per se, or even the last couple of days. But we do know that the CFTC has been looking at Ether futures. And has been soliciting market feedback. Basically, after they solicited market feedback, that they are looking to sort of implement Ether futures. Now, a futures contract might bring in fresh institutional investors into the crypto space. And now the CFTC would only really respond to specific applications put before it, whether they would either approve it or reject it. They're not going to volunteer an opinion and go out of their way to say, what they want. But if a derivative exchange came to them and they essentially said that if a derivative exchange were to come to them and say that they wanted to launch a particular Ethereum futures product and that it met their requirements, that there would be a good chance that they would basically approve that and would allow that to be self-certified. Ethereum whales, I just recently read something interesting that Ethereum whales, something like 376 individuals hold something like 33% of all Ether, and that's fairly it's fairly concentrated. So if more money is moving into Ether and it's from a more distributed side, that's probably good for the cryptocurrency and for keeping it stable.
And now, Kevin, I want to turn to you and talk about market capitalization. It has continued surging. We're seeing levels that we've not seen since August of last year, rising around $260 billion. This represents a gain of approximately 40% over the past 7 days. Do we still see this as a bullish momentum that isn't yet fading?
Well, obviously market capitalization looks at the entire market cap, or which is something you don't do usually in let's say more mature markets, right? You generally look by industry or sector. You may take a sprinkling of different sectors, but generally speaking, we don't look at the entire commodities market to get an idea of where gold may be going, for example. You tend to look at individual assets. So obviously the market cap is growing, which is good, though we have to keep in mind that with this ebb and flow that Jason and I have both mentioned, when you're even Bitcoin being, let's say, the largest cap inside of this industry, meaning the one that holds the biggest piece of the market cap, it's still relatively small compared to, let's say, any other commodities market, whether that be cattle, whether that be whatever it is, whether it be corn, whatever, it's still relatively small. So when you think about that, when assets move back and forth, meaning they move from this, let's say, larger cap into micro caps, it's very easy to move the market cap higher overall. because these microcaps with just a small amount of money can obviously go up by 10, 20, 30, 50, 100% rather easily. So to look at the market cap to gauge whether we're truly in some type of bullish momentum, I don't think is the best indicator. Let's say price is probably a far better indicator than the on specific assets. But when you look at the top, let's say majors, which you have Ethereum, you have Ripple, you have Bitcoin, et cetera, they're all generally speaking in some type of bullish momentum at this point. So I don't see a reason to say this is going to stop, but I would always caveat to say we're still in a reversal from the overall bullish momentum up to 20,000, or not a reversal, but a retest. We're in a retracement from the fall from 20,000 on Bitcoin and down to 3,000. Now we're up at 8. Again, I think around 9,000 will get us to that 38 retracement level, which a lot of traders look at, this Fibonacci retracement, 38.2%. And we're coming up on those levels. So those levels are going to show some serious resistance for Bitcoin. And because the market's still coupled together, we still see correlation. We actually started to see some decoupling when we had this altcoin season and then back to Bitcoin. But you can still see that coupling still exists, with Ethereum now kind of playing catch up and kind of dominating this little bull run right here, considering the fact that I think percentage-wise it's on track to maybe even beat out Bitcoin. Like I said, having said that, market cap is not the best thing to look at because it's just too segmented. But overall, I would say that we definitely have more bullish momentum now than we do bearish. I think that's obvious.
You mentioned the 9,000 US dollar mark there, Kevin. What are you expecting to see if it does hit this mark, and it does hit it fairly soon? What does that signify for you in the markets?
Well, psychologically speaking, I think I mentioned this on one show in the past, is that when you see 7, so a 7, whether it's a 7, a 70, a 700, a 7,000, you're almost guaranteed to see 10. And the reason for that is that the psychological levels on the low end, the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, the 5s, kind of are the hardest to get through. It's almost like as people start to see those barriers broken, every time a barrier gets broken, it gets a bit easier to assume you're going to get to that next barrier. And usually, like when I was trading FX, anytime I saw a market product go through a 7, like I said, whether it's a 7, a 70, a 700, a 7,000, I was longing until 10. You have to get a bit of confirmation. It's not just every time, but it's a good indicator. And I do think we show, just mentioned this, 6,000 and 7,000 kind of went through like a hot knife through butter when you talk about Bitcoin. 8,000, we've been playing around with a bit. It's only been a few days. If we get up towards 9,000, I think 10,000 is almost a guarantee, or close to it, 9,800, 9,700, 9,600. And then you're probably going to see it bounce, mainly because there's going to be a lot of technical traders trading off those Fibonacci retracement levels. Obviously, 10,000 is a big psychological barrier. And most traders will place orders above and below psychological barriers. So that means that 97 up to 10,000 is going to be difficult. However, we could even see a spike through 10,000. But I think the way 7,000 was pushed through, if we can do the same thing around 8, I think 10 is inevitable. But I'd be looking for a lot of sell pressure up as we move upwards. That's for sure.
And Jason, I want to turn to you and I want to ask you the same question regarding market capitalization, the fact that it has kept surging. We've heard from Kevin. I'd like to hear from you now. Are we seeing that actually now this does mean that this bullish momentum is still not fading?
Yeah, it hasn't really faded. It really feels like we are in a bull market over the last few weeks. I do think that we will actually hit 10K before we hit 4K or 3K. I mean, there were a lot of analysts that were saying that we were going to see a massive drop in Bitcoin before it started to increase. That was something that was a trope that was discussed quite often. Even on the show, I believe Tony Vay said something similar to that. But we haven't seen that, and I don't think we are going to see that either. I think we are going to see probably us getting to Bitcoin getting to 10,000 before anything anything untoward happens. It's also important to realize that the retail market is high base, so wherever institutions go, retail investors will soon follow. And there has been a lot of noise lately about institutional investors coming in. There's a CoinMarketCap news that they're launching. That basically trading is going to be allowed in New York. That was something that was seen as sort of an institutional situation because Wall Street is located in New York. There's a bunch of other stuff. The Ethereum thing I mentioned, for example, about institutional investors possibly getting in because of futures. So there's been a lot of talk on futures and institutional investors going in, and so that's obviously started to increase. But there's also been a lot of adoption. So we mentioned eBay is there's rumors that eBay is looking to implement Bitcoin. We know that Whole Foods is going to be implementing cryptocurrency payments, and these things are huge, particularly for retail investors that are used to shopping at Whole Foods and used to buying things on eBay. When it starts affecting their day-to-day life and it starts being something very real that they can go to and actually spend, that starts really moving things in a positive direction for Bitcoin. But there is certainly a degree of FOMO going on, but I don't think that that's the driving factor behind the market.
So you've mentioned adoption there, and you've also mentioned market sentiment being positive. I want to ask you, Jason, about the fact that we are seeing CoinMarketCap's website's daily traded volume hit another fresh all-time high as well. Are you seeing this as surprising, that the volume keeps on rising at these high prices that we are seeing?
So it's important to note that the volume indicates both buying pressure and sell pressure. What this tells us is there's intense interest in the market, and that's only growing. Over time, we do expect, as the market matures, we would expect more people to come in, and that would raise the volumes. On the other hand, we see that Bitcoin is holding its own for the most part. And slowly inching up for the most part. In general, right now it's just under 7,900, but previously we've seen it go under 8,000 and then inch back up, and that's obviously a good sign. It bodes well for Bitcoin and the market at large. But also, people are fond of mentioning that this nowhere near Bitcoin's all-time highs of 20,000. I think that was a real aberration, though. In 2017, I think there was massive hype going on, but I think this recovery is a lot more real and substantial because all the numbers are up. I mean, Bitcoin transaction numbers, the Bitcoin transaction speeds, outputs, hash rates, pretty much everything you look at, adoption, all these numbers are up, all these fundamental factors are up. And so I think this feels a lot more real than the last time we were at 10,000 or 8,000 or anything of that magnitude. So I think that this is something that will likely stick, and we certainly have a lot more justification for being at 8,000 now than we ever did being at 8,000 in 2017, for example.
And that's a really interesting point. Now, Jason said a phrase there, which is more people coming in and raising volumes. So, Kevin, I want to turn to you now as a fellow exchange. The Invest in Blockchain website has reported that Coinbase is actually now among one of the trending searches on the iOS App Store. Is this also a sign that the global FOMO, it could indeed be back soon?
Well, as soon as Bitcoin kind of passed that 5,000 mark, CNBC, CNN, BBC, they all started talking about it again. And obviously, when mainstream media starts talking about it, even when it's not necessarily in the best of lights, people hear it and people search it and people look for it. I've also seen, I was on a plane yesterday, I believe it was SAS, if I'm not mistaken, and inside of their magazine, they actually had an article about crypto. So, when those things happen, the general public tend to take a look, and that's one of the it's one of the reasons why there was so much fuel behind the 2017 bubble that Jason just was talking about. And I think he's right that right now there's much more reason to believe this 8,000 price than there was reason to believe it in 2017. The big difference, though, is that in 2017 we were definitely in a bubble, end of 2017, early 2018. Right now we're not in a bubble; we're in a range. It's a huge range. I mean, 20,000 to 3,000 is quite the range. If I had to, I don't know, rate the range, it would get a 5-star rating for the size of the range. That's for sure. But it's still a range. We're generally range trading inside of a very big range. So it's not a bubble. So obviously, for markets to prove themselves, as markets mature, they definitely need reasons for the price to move. Inside of bubbles, you don't need much of a reason. Like we talked about, I mentioned yesterday the term half spark. You don't need much of a spark to get a non-mature, unregulated market to move and move fast. As the market matures, you need a bigger fire, and eventually that fire has to be huge. So it is a sign that the market's maturing, which I think is good all around. The fact that people are searching for Coinbase has a big footprint. And the fact that, worldwide news organizations are now talking again about Bitcoin, and they're having debates about it again. Means that more people are hearing about it. Means probably more people are picking up their devices while they watch their local news broadcasts and saying, "Oh yeah, I remember that. Remember there was this thing, Coinbase. My brother had an account there. Maybe I'll buy some Bitcoin." So I think it just shows us that the public at large, price point matters. Meaning it doesn't matter how much IBM is invested in blockchain, doesn't matter how much Microsoft is investing, it doesn't matter that all these great businesses and projects and infrastructures being built off of blockchain and cryptos being involved in it quite heavily. To the public at large, at least to get involved or re-involved, price matters. So as price moves higher, people get excited, they start searching, and they come back into the market.
And you're right, it certainly is an exciting time. Thank you both so much for coming on. Always a pleasure to catch up, and we'll speak again very, very soon. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Well, before we sign off, I do have a last-minute update from our editorial staff regarding the crypto market. Total market capitalization has retreated by nearly $20 billion from the recent high of nearly $264 billion. Trading activity is still on the rise, and the CoinMarketCap website's 24-hour traded volume has moved above the $116 billion level. The sentiment has turned mixed as there are a number of assets that have moved into the negative territory. Well, that's all for this Thursday's Crypto Now live show. We thank both of our guests for their insights, and we thank you, the audience, for joining us, and invite you all to accompany us every weekday at this same time.